Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down and do another video for you guys and gals. Let me get a sip of my water. Get my beautiful radio voice going. Let's talk a little bit about junk volume. All right. I am someone who has run the full gambit of different training volumes. You guys have seen me do periods of time where I've trained every day. You've seen me where I've done 30 sets for certain muscle groups in a week, 35 for certain muscle groups in a week. I've done as little as programs where I did one set to failure for an exercise, maybe once or twice a week. I've messed with all the extremes. I always keep up with the research. I coach full time, watch different stuff in my lifters. Here's the thing I want to talk about is junk volume. All right. Because I generally believe that real answer is somewhere between the two. I don't think for most people, the ultra low HIIT Mike Menzer type training is the way to go. I think the evidence does show that anything less than a few sets per week absolutely cannot achieve very high levels of hypertrophy without just continually upping the dose. It doesn't work. Okay, and I'm going to say that threshold is probably around the 4 to 5 set per week range. If you're dropping under that, the odds that unless you're a novice lifter, the odds that you're going to stimulate significant muscle growth is starting to get real low. Okay, say you probably need at least 5 hard sets per week to see good results. But we've seen in the lab that even 5 can produce very, very robust levels of hypertrophy if it's hard training. Okay. On the other extreme, very few people are going to benefit from doing 20 plus. Sorry, they're not. A couple of studies have shown that the ultra high volumes can potentially, for some people, have very small effects, at least it's done for short periods of time. We're talking very small benefits. Not saying non-existent, but I think there's a lot of context to that. There's a lot of nuance to that. I think those people are also not training very hard. And my observation as someone who's done the ultra high volume trainings, you hold way, way back. It's just human nature. It is human nature to do it. All right, so there's a point where it easily turns into junk volume. So what do we mean by junk volume? Junk volume is just like for runners' junk miles. Any mile that you run that doesn't improve your performance for the coming race is junk, right? It was needless training that had no benefit. The same thing with lifting. Any set that you do that does not contribute to your muscle growth is a waste of time. Why? Because there's no training response. We're not lifting weights to burn calories. That's exercise. So if you're running to improve at running, you are training to improve at running. Okay? Anything done outside of that is just exercise, which is just to get sweaty, burn some calories. Most of us are not running or lifting purely to burn calories. We are seeking adaptations, performance adaptations, structural adaptations in our body. We are lifting weights to gain muscle or gain strength or at least gain the ability to produce more force. Okay? And most of that comes from the muscle growth. All right. That's what we're trying to do. So any set that doesn't stimulate new muscle growth is junk volume. Now, we're not talking about your ability to recover from it either. I'm talking about purely inside the session. Now, just because it stimulated growth doesn't mean you recover from it. Because it's not what we stimulate in the gym that matters, it's what we recover from after that determines how much we grow. All right, stimulus in the gym. If it's not reaching upper threshold muscle fibers and fatiguing them, that's it. You're not growing from it unless you're a novice. So let's come back over. I've discussed this quite a bit in the past. The data shows that even for novices, more of the muscle growth comes from the higher threshold muscle fibers than from the lower, but there is some growth, right? They'll grow a little bit. The more advanced you get, the less growth potential exists in the slower twitch intermediate fibers, and you start finding it. Once you've been training hard for a few years, unless you add anabolic hormones to the mix, or unless you increase the amount of them that you're taking, let's say that. I think that's a good way to look at it, because 0 and then adding some is increasing. Being at 500 milligrams and going to 1,000 is increasing, right? Staying at the amount you're at, whether it's 0, 500, 1,000, is staying where you're at. Unless you are adding more to the equation, easy definition. Unless you are adding more, and once you've been training a few years, almost all of your muscle growth is coming from the upper threshold faster twitch fibers. That is where it is coming from, by and large, 90+% of it. So any set that doesn't reach them isn't causing muscle growth. So if your sets are too far from failure and you're fresh, they're just warm-up sets. They're not doing it. We could argue all day long as to how far that is. That is subject to massive debate among researchers, but I'm going to say within 5 reps. In other words, if it's a weight that you are capable of doing for 12 reps and you would fail on rep 13, you probably need to get to rep 8. That holds true all the way through. People say, what do you mean? If you have a weight that you can do 12 reps with fresh on an exercise and you get further into your workout and you can't get to 8 reps with that weight anymore, you're probably too fatigued. Most of the upper threshold motor units are too fatigued to be recruited in that set. Keep in mind, they take time. They get fatigued. There's a reason you can't just keep lifting the same heavy weight for 100 reps, right? You can't take your 5 rep max and do 37 reps with it. You can't. You also can't do it over too many sets. It's just, you can't lift it anymore. We come back to just the more endurance fibers doing the work. That's why really short breaks in the lab show less muscle growth for that reason, because the highest threshold motor units are still too fatigued. The muscle fibers are too fatigued to reactivate. And if they're not getting activated, they're not getting mechanical tension on them. Okay? No mechanical tension, no growth. All right, so that's a good rule of thumb to use. You have reached junk volume when your performance degrades to the point where you cannot achieve that anymore. People say, what does that mean for a drop set? It means exactly what I just said. Taking 10 seconds and stripping weight down, unless you're novice enough to those intermediate fibers matter, or you're using enough, right, 3 cc's, unless you're using enough of that there cell tech, it's not doing shit. Reality. It's just creating fatigue. It's not getting very much growth. It might be giving a little bit to some of those intermediate fibers. That's about it. It's not giving you quality growth. Hard-working sets that have a high level of performance, that achieve high levels of mechanical tension on the muscle fibers that you are actively seeking to grow, is what makes you grow. If you're not reaching that, you are now in junk volume territory. You're probably not getting a real growth from it. You might be getting some capillary beds. You might be getting, training some glycogen storage, maybe. Again, you might be helping with tendons, a little blood flow to your tendons. There can be benefits to those things, but you're probably not growing from it. It's junk volume. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.